cross-examination of Diddy's former employee, Capricorn Clark. So Mark Agnafilo from Diddy's defense team handles the cross-examination, and he starts off highlighting that he met with Capricorn Clark in April of 2024, which was after Cassie filed her civil lawsuit. And during that meeting, Capricorn Clark expressed wanting to come back and work with Diddy. Agnafilo goes on to say that during that meeting, Clark said Diddy, quote, wouldn't be in this mess if he had kept me around. Capricorn Clark agrees that she probably said something like that during that meeting. She also testifies that her relationship with Diddy was 1000% platonic, but Agnafilo asks her if she sent Diddy a text message in 2021 saying, quote, did you ever know that I had the biggest crush on you before I started working for you? In the text, she goes on to say, we hung out all the time. I played it super cool. I don't think you knew. I just knew for sure that you liked to have me around. In response to this, Capricorn Clark says she doesn't remember saying this to Diddy, but she does recall reaching out to him in 2021. And Agnafilo never goes into if Diddy responded and if he did what he said in that response. From there, Agnafilo asked Capricorn Clark why she at times didn't get along with Cassie, to which Clark says in 2008, Cassie got more bravado being Diddy's girlfriend the longer it lasted. She says, quote, she thought I was being paid to help her. She went from being more of a sweet model to a feisty girlfriend. Agnafilo and Clark then have a bit of a back and forth about Cassie's talent. Agnafilo asks Clark if she thinks Cassie was talented, to which Clark says Cassie had talent and was very beautiful. Agnafilo says, but was not talented, and Clark says she was not. I have good taste. Now, wait a minute. Clark goes on to say, quote, talented to me is Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. Cassie, she was more of a studio musician. She needed things equalized. Agnafilo says, did she perform live? Clark says a couple times, not the greatest. Agnafilo asks if she was a hard worker, to which Clark says at times. And when Agnafilo asks when wasn't Cassie a hard worker, Capricorn Clark says she preferred to be with her boyfriend. When we moved to LA after Kim had the twins in 2009-ish, I saw her developing more of a relationship with Puff. Clark also notes that in 2016, Cassie's narcotic use was preventing her from opportunities. In regards to Cassie's career, Capricorn Clark says that between 2007 and 2010, Diddy was making sure Cassie had the best and top of everything for her career, from stylists, producers, choreographers, and more. She says Cassie had more attention and resources than other artists like Young Jock and a group from Atlanta. And Clark says by 2012, Cassie was getting the same amount of attention as artists like Machine Gun Kelly and French Montana. The defense then specifically asked Capricorn Clark if in 2016, when she was working as Cassie's creative director, if Cassie was forced to dye her hair green, but Clark says no. She said she presented the idea to Cassie as a new look for the MTV Video Music Awards, and Cassie was on board and had a say in the decision. And context here is the defense is highlighting this to counter what Cassie and other witnesses have said about Cassie having no say in her career or even her look. They all said it was Diddy's decision. And then the defense moves on to Cassie and Kid Cudi's relationship. Capricorn Clark says about a week before the alleged break-in and kidnapping, he picked up Cassie from Kid Cudi's house after Cassie spent the night there. So as far as she knew, at that time, Cassie was still in a relationship with Diddy. Capricorn Clark says the day Diddy came to her house at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, he had a weapon in his hand, but he did not point it at her. He was more so waving it around. Agnafilo then asked, isn't it true that you, meaning Clark, went to Kid Cudi's house to make sure Diddy didn't do something stupid? But Capricorn Clark says no. She went because Diddy told her he didn't care that she didn't want to go. And then Agnafilo seems to suggest that during an interview with Homeland Security, Capricorn Clark said that when Diddy came knocking on her door that morning, that he came with a building security guard, but Clark repeatedly denied that she ever told Homeland Security that. But she does say that when Diddy got to her building, he demanded a security guard let him into the building, and that security guard was fired after that. Agnafilo asked Clark if she actually saw how Diddy got into Kid Cudi's house, but she says her back was turned and she wasn't paying close attention, but she was praying that Kid Cudi was not inside. Clark then reiterates what she says happened when she was in the car outside Kid Cudi's house. She says she called Cassie and told her Puff came to my house with a weapon. We came to Cudi's house to off him. And then she says she heard Cudi in the background saying they're in my house. But during this questioning, Capricorn also now says that before she called Cassie that morning, she called Lauren London for 30 seconds because Lauren was like a sister to her and she wanted someone to know where she was. On the stand, Clark said, quote, he was in the house and if he did get off, I just needed somebody to know where I was in case this all went really bad. According to this reporting, after Clark thought about it on the stand, she then added that it's possible she called Lauren and Cassie on three-way, but she can't remember. So she may have called them each individually or she called them together on three-way. Clark then talks again about how her, Diddy, and the bodyguard chased after Kid Cudi, but eventually turned away and saw police pass them. And then there's a brief mention of Capricorn Clark being on vacation with Rihanna. And then the defense shows emails from 2014 and 2015 of Capricorn Clark asking Diddy to forgive her. In one email, she writes, quote, "She," meaning Cassie, "was never my friend. She wanted me gone. I realized." Agnifilo asked Clark if she thought Cassie wanted her gone, to which Clark, crying, says, "This is complicated for me. I felt that I was Puff's protector. I felt I was the only one gone and she was still there." Capricorn Clark goes on to say that when she did return to work for Diddy in 2016, she believed it was only because Cassie wanted to work with her, and she says that bothered her. And with that, cross-examination of Capricorn Clark is wrapped up, and then the government does a brief redirect, and then Capricorn Clark is excused from the stand. And that's the end of day 10. I'm not a lawyer, but let's get into the cross-examination of Diddy's former employee, Capricorn Clark. So Mark Agnifilo from Diddy's defense team.
Testimony from a former Diddy employee may help nail him on a RICO charge. Capricorn Clark, who worked for Combs between 2012 and 2020 in various capacities, testified as a government witness today. She told the court that there was one day where Combs banged on her apartment door with a gun in his hand and demanded that she come with him because we are going to kill Kid Cudi. She later testified that Combs also told her not to talk to police. And through this testimony, you can sort of start to see how prosecutors are building this racketeering charge case. Racketeering is a charge that encompasses a pattern of different criminal activity, which includes murder and witness tampering, both of which could be reasonably encompassed by Clark's testimony. She also testified that there were times where Combs asked her to obtain illicit substances on his behalf, which could also be a racketeering charge. She said at another point that there were times that she was held against her will while employed under Combs, which could go to kidnapping, which is another racketeering charge. So you can sort of see how her testimony is building towards this big RICO Act case. Testimony from a former Diddy employee may help nail him on a RICO charge. Capricorn Clark, who worked for Combs between 2012 and 2020 in various capacities, testified as a government.
We just wrapped up day 10 of Diddy's trial. Capricorn Clark is officially done. She took all day, which was a lot longer than they expected. I remember cross-examination began before lunch break, and that's where it was revealed that she had met with Diddy's team in April of 2024 because she thought she was going to be discussing becoming chief of staff. Well, after listening to the rest of her cross-exam, I think it was incredibly obvious that Diddy's team only met with her because they wanted to get information for this case and had absolutely no intention of actually giving her a job. After lunch, Mark Agnifilo had asked her why she did not get along with Cassie. He said she had first met Cassie when she was with Ryan Leslie and said she went from being a sweet model to a feisty girlfriend. In her own words, she said she got more bravado being his girlfriend the longer it lasted. She said she felt like Cassie was treating her more as a personal assistant than she was treating her as a creative asset. She told the jury she thought I was being paid to help her, and that's when the prosecutor objected. Mark Agnifilo then got messy by asking if she thought Cassie was talented, and she said she had talent and she was beautiful. Mark pressed further by saying she was not talented, and she said she was not. I have good taste. Talent is Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. Cassie was more of a studio musician. She needed things equalized. She was asked if Cassie performed live and if she was a hard worker, and she said she performed live a couple of times and she wasn't the greatest. She said at times Cassie was a hard worker, but she preferred being with her boyfriend. She also said when they moved to LA in 2009 after Kim Porter had the twins, that's when she noticed that Cassie had developed more of a relationship with Diddy. Obviously, Diddy's attorneys are trying to play an angle that Cassie's career didn't thrive because Diddy stopped it from thriving, but it had everything to do with her talent and how hard she worked. Capricorn Clark also said that Diddy provided her with all the components to make her a star, whether it be stylist, makeup artist, as well as getting to work with other musicians. She also agreed that Cassie was getting more help than others, and despite what seems like her issues with Cassie, she talked about the things that she had helped Cassie on when she had run into her. She said, I ran into Cassie. She said she had a new deal with Epic, and I dressed her like David Bowie. We did a photo shoot at my house. We wrote a mini movie and shot it for the project. Then we get into the Kid Cudi situation, and as you know, the government is trying to charge Diddy with kidnapping Capricorn Clark, and Diddy's attorney tried to prove that this wasn't kidnapping, and she went with Diddy in order to protect him. I won't get into all the details again because at this point we've heard this story 3 times, but at one point Mark Agnifilo had suggested that she willingly went with Diddy because she was trying to stop him from doing something stupid, to which she pushed back saying, No, I did not want to go. He told me he didn't care what I wanted. He went on to say, well, how did Diddy even get into your building if you had security? And she said security let him in, and he ended up getting fired afterwards. He asked her, did he point the weapon at you? And she said no, but he was waving it around. Also brought up the fact that both Cassie and Kid Cudi never mentioned Diddy having a weapon, and she said, I called them briefly and I told them really quickly that he had a weapon. She was whispering because she didn't want Diddy to hear her on the phone. She said she also called Lauren London really briefly to let her know where she was in case something bad happened. They then asked how Diddy got into Kid Cudi's house, to which she said she wasn't paying attention. She was just hoping Kid Cudi was not inside, and she was trying to plan her next move. I remember in her testimony, she said Diddy fired her 8 months later in August of 2012, and it was hard for her to get work. So Diddy's attorney asked her, what job did you get after you were fired by Diddy? This response was very important because she said, I was hired by Chris Lighty to work for 50 Cent. After this, they go into emails and they pull up one where she said, one day you'll forgive me. Anyway, be well, XX. They then pulled another one where she wrote on February of 2015, your grace period to be mad at me has surpassed the agreed time, LOL. They asked if she wrote that and she said yes. They pulled up another one where she had wrote, she, as in Cassie, was never my friend. She wanted me gone, I realized. At this point, she was crying and stuttering, saying, sorry, this is complicated for me. I felt that I was Puff's protector. I felt I was the only one gone and she was still there and things were getting worse. I tried to keep professionalism as the goal. She was asked if it hurt that the only reason why Diddy had brought her back was because Cassie wanted her there. And she said, yes, I have no parents. My son is autistic. My stakes are higher. I asked her if Cassie had an addiction problem, to which she also said yes. I asked about a movie that she had worked on with Cassie, and it was a short movie called Love a Loser. They asked her about writing to Diddy, wanting his forgiveness, and she said, I wanted my life back, my dream, my competency. And then he asked when she had met with him, as in Diddy's attorney, you wanted to work with him, right? And she said, we discussed it. That's when they say nothing further, and it goes back to the prosecutor, which was really short, and I wanted you to remember the Chris Lighty thing because that was really important in this situation. They asked her what happened with the job with Chris Lighty, to which she said he died the day before I was supposed to start. Then I guess she got another opportunity with Interscope, and she said it wasn't about a job. They told me to leave Puff alone. This, in my opinion, proves April 2024 was never about a job, and she was getting played. And any other job opportunity she might have had could mean that Diddy was making sure she wasn't gonna get it. I am not saying he unalived anyone, but I'm just saying every time she had a job opportunity, something else was happening. And tried to tell the jury that she was blacklisted, but his attorney objected and the judge sustained. Lastly, she was asked, why did you return to work for Mr. Combs? She said, so people could see I wasn't disposable. At this level of business, he held all the power. She was asked, why did you meet them? And she said, to get my life back. Lastly, she was asked during the kidnapping, was he holding a pew-pew? To which she said, yes. That is to remind the jury that she did not go with her own free will. She had no choice. It was a kidnapping. Capricorn Clark is officially done, and tomorrow they plan on bringing 4 witnesses. An LA Police Department officer, an LA Fire Department investigator, Deontay Nash, and a woman called Mia, who we've heard about previously in Cassie's testimony. They just wrapped up day.
Y'all subscribe and hit the like button.
So the prosecution doesn't want the DNA evidence from Kid Cudi's car to come in. As always, I'm an attorney. I'm just not your attorney. But that's cool because I am your trial bestie and I'm explaining things to you in a way that makes sense. So before the jury came in, the judge was like, let's get to why the prosecution don't want this evidence to come in. The prosecution's like, he's not an expert in DNA or blood analysis. It's a word for that. It's called like seriology or something. I don't know how to say that. So we just gonna say expert. The judge was like, well, did the officer ask if DNA test was done? Prosecution was like, I mean, yeah, but it's like partial DNA. And again, the officer can't speak to the DNA because he's not a DNA expert. Then the judge was like, okay, let's clarify. Are you saying you don't want the DNA report to come in? Or are you saying that you don't want the officer to testify about the DNA? There are some rules of evidence that requires like a witness testify to their personal knowledge, or like for experts that can't really exceed the scope or talk about things that they're not an expert in. So the prosecution is trying to play into that. Prosecution is like, we don't want none of it to come in. We don't want him to be questioned about it. We don't want the report to come in. Cut it. Defense chimes in, and defense is like, it gives fair game to me. And the judge was like, yeah, I'm overruling this. Now, the prosecution always got to put in their 2 cents, and I like that. And it was like, this is literally going to mislead the jury. And then the judge was like, Okay, like I said, overruled. Anywho, so the jury just got an hour ago and they've already started testifying. I'll be back with more update. So the prosecution doesn't want the DNA evidence.
Imagine your boss shows up to the door with a gun, demanding that you help confront your friend over some personal relationship. Sounds like a movie plot, right? Well, for Capricorn Clark, this was a terrifying reality. Let's delve into the shocking developments in day 10 of the Diddy trial. Capricorn Clark, Diddy's former assistant, testified that December 2011, Diddy appeared at her apartment, visibly enraged and armed. He allegedly forced her into a car to confront the rapper Kid Cudi, who was reportedly involved with Cassie Ventura at the time. Clark recounted Diddy saying, "Get dressed, we're going to go unalive him." She feared for her life during this incident. And a lot of people keep saying, well, why did she keep going back to work? He already said if she said something, he would throw her into the East River. So why are people acting brand new? Everybody's the problem but Diddy? Anyway, Clark's testimony continued with details of the confrontation. She claimed that Diddy broke into Kid Cudi's home, and during the ordeal, she managed to warn Kid Cudi about Diddy's intentions. This incident has been a focal point of this trial, highlighting the alleged threats, intimidation, and the tactics used by Diddy. And let's be real, everybody can't be the problem, like I've been saying. Clark also testified about earlier threats from Diddy. On the first day of working with him, she alleged that he took her to Central Park and threatened her life due to her previous association with Suge Knight. Additionally, she recounted being accused of theft, subject to days of a lie detector test, and she was isolated in a building and threatened with being thrown into the East River. During cross-examination, Clark became emotional as the defense questioned her about her motives and her past interactions with Diddy. They presented messages suggesting the complex relationship, including text messages where Clark expressed her admiration for Diddy. Despite this, Clark maintained that her actions were driven by fear and coercion. Clark's testimony adds to the prosecution's portrayal of Diddy as someone who used threats and intimidation to control people around him. The trial continues to unfold with more witnesses expected to provide further insight into who Diddy is and his alleged actions of the music mogul. The revelations from day 10 of the Diddy trial are both shocking and disturbing. As the proceedings continue, I'll keep you updated on the latest developments. Stay tuned for more
Diddy's attorney began his cross-examination with Capricorn Clark, and the first thing he said was, "Did we not meet in April of 2024 with your attorney, Brian Friedman?" Which, as you guys know, he's Justin Baldoni's attorney in the Blake Lively case, so this man is busy. But apparently she had met with Diddy's team in April of 2024, which was after Cassie filed her lawsuit because she wanted to discuss working with him. She said she was interested in working as Diddy's chief of staff, and when Mark Agnifilo asked her, "You said you didn't think Cassie was good for Mr. Combs. Why?" She said, "I just thought they were toxic." She even admitted to saying he wouldn't be in this mess if he had kept me around. Mark Agnifilo then pulled a text from 2021 where she had allegedly told Diddy, "Did you ever know I had the biggest crush on you before I worked for you?" Didn't deny reaching out to him, but she said she didn't remember saying that. She was also asked if she called him Chalk, which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. She then took it back to 2001 where she had met Diddy, and she was asked if Diddy never did substances at the time, and she said he was doing X. Mark Agnifilo then said, "But it got worse," and she said yes. She was then asked if she had worked for Def Jam and Run DMC, and she said, "I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z." And then he asked her, "So how did you come to work for Mr. Combs?" Said she put her resume on Monster, and he said, "You'd work for me," and I was like, "Maybe." He was acting on Broadway in Raisin in the Sun, and I was impressed. Then talked about how she had shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign, and she said, "My job was to get the t-shirts on the celebrities and into the photo shoots. I'd call them and say Puff wanted them to come." Mark Agnifilo said, "And they came?" And she said, "They did." She was asked how long was that before the jewelry went missing, and she said about 4 months. Asked when did the jewelry go missing, she said it was after the 4th of July, and said that he had the white party that we all know on the 4th of July at his house in the Hamptons. Asked who else had gotten a lie detector test, she said Mike B, his stylist. She said she never took it to HR, but she did get fired for 3 weeks. He then said she came back to work for Diddy on his 35th birthday and she was in charge of the celebrity list. When she came back between 2004 to 2006, she was making $65,000 for him and then $90,000 at Jive. Asked why she came back to work for Diddy, she said she had gotten top records for R. Kelly and he was impressed. He asked her to come back. It was for his brand, Sean John, but for women. He then goes on to say that she thought she was a really good employee for him and then said that she worked really hard. And when she was asked if others worked hard, she said, not as hard as me. He then got emotional and started crying when she said, I did learn a lot from Mr. Combs. He broke that glass ceiling for us Black people in the business world. And asked if she needed a minute, she said, no, it's complicated. And this is where they took their lunch break. They did take a longer lunch break today, so I will be back once they're done with her cross-examination. Diddy's attorney began his This is part 2 of Capricorn Clark's testimony, and on the stand, she talked about how she would set up hotel rooms for Diddy. She said in the hotel rooms, there would be cameras, baby oil, lube, and of course, substances. She talked about Diddy's aliases at the hotel rooms and said his girlfriend's aliases would be Jackie Star and that Kim Porter would stay in these hotel rooms once a week. And she said she would also be in another hotel room watching TV, catching up on sleep, and ordering room service. When Diddy would be done with the hotel rooms, she would have to clean them up, and she said there would be so much baby oil that sometimes she would even see handprints. In 2008, she said Cassie would be at these hotel rooms about once a week. Asked if Diddy ever talked about Cassie to her, she said yes, and then detailed how one time it was her, Miss London, and Chef Jordan in a room with Diddy. Diddy called Cassie to come into the room. He asked her to do some things. He asked her to twirl and then told her to leave. And tells the women, you bees wouldn't do that, and that's why you don't have a man. She responded saying, you're mother effing right. He talked about how Diddy would have her get substances for him, and one time he asked her to get snow, and she said, for who? And when the prosecutor asked, why did you ask that? She said, because my mother passed away from that, and I wasn't gonna do it. When Diddy told her that she was a security guy and she had substances in my name, they were in a toiletry bag that I would carry around, or security. He also talked about Diddy's cash and how one time he had 100,000 euros on the private jet with him that he was bringing back after doing club appearances in Europe. She said he would give it to security and then it would go into his bedroom personal safe. When she came back to work for Diddy, and this was after he had pushed her that one time in Miami, she said she was more so working for Cassie. Told her you wouldn't be working directly for me, but he had final approval on everything that Cassie did. She then talks about the fact that they all moved to LA because of Kim Porter, but Cassie stayed in New York. When she would come to LA, she would either stay in a hotel with Diddy or with her. Now we get into December of 2011 when Diddy found out about Kid Cudi. Capricorn Clark said that one day Cassie had come over and she had brought with her Kid Cudi. She said after finding out about him, one day Cassie had texted her saying that she wanted to go out in public in LA with him. She told her, delete this text. You're texting me on a phone that Diddy pays for. Realizing how dangerous the situation could be, she took Cassie to Best Buy to get her a burner phone in order for her to speak to Kid Cudi. But Diddy eventually found out, and she said he came to her home banging on her door, and when she looked in the peephole, he was pacing back and forth holding a weapon, and his pants had a rip from his knee up and his underwear was showing. He opened the door and he said, why didn't you tell me? Who is Scott? She responded saying, I don't know any Scott, and he tells her, we're going to go unalive him. She told him she didn't want to go. He responded saying, I don't give a F what you want, get dressed. She was then forced in the back of the Escalade and said Diddy sat next to her, which is unusual because he's usually in the front. But he sat next to her with a weapon in his lap, and his security guard, Ruben, was driving. He drove to Kid Cudi's house, which took about 15 to 20 minutes, and when they went inside, she said she called Cassie. Cassie picked up the phone. She said, Cassie, where the F are you? Puff is at Cudi's house with a pew-pew. She said Kid Cudi was with Cassie at the time, and you could hear him in the background yelling, he's in my house. After hanging up, she panicked and changed Cassie's name to Stormy so that Diddy wouldn't know she called Cassie. He came back to the car. He took her phone and called the last number she had dialed, and then flipped out on Cassie saying, what the F is this number? Short time after, Kid Cudi pulled up next to Diddy's Escalade, and then he accelerated off. Diddy's vehicle followed in pursuit, and she said it probably was about a minute, but it felt like forever. Security then took them to a nightclub, and Diddy had her call Cassie saying that he will not let Capricorn Clark go unless she's able to come get her. Once Capricorn Clark grabbed Cassie and brought her to Diddy, Diddy made it very clear to the both of them, you need to let Kid Cudi know not to tell the police it was him. And he told told them, if you do not convince him, I will unalive you all. She did tell Kid Cudi, and she said to him, if you tell on him, he'll hurt all of us. And Cassie repeatedly asked her, do you really think he will? Said they then go back to Diddy's rental where he was waiting in a robe and his underwear, and that's when he started to beat on Cassie. Said he was kicking her over and over, and she did not fight back, and she was quietly crying to herself. Cassie was curled in a fetal position, and she and Ruben were about 5 feet away, and nobody did anything. He said Diddy then looked at her and said, if you jump in, I'll F you up too. She was then told to leave, and as she walked away from the house, she could still see Diddy kicking Cassie. Said she immediately called Cassie's mom, and she tells her, he's beating the ish out of your daughter. I can't call the police, but you can. Cassie's mom then told her, I'll handle it, and then hung up the phone. Now remember, this is December of 2011, and she said from December of 2011 up until August of 2012, Diddy threatened her about 50 times. Would call them the B word and said, I should kill you and I should cut her face. He then eventually told her that she was not allowed to be friends with Cassie anymore, and the only interaction they could have was work related. He said after that, her relationship with Cassie completely changed. Now, she didn't give us any information on who might have burned Kid Cudi's car, but she said that arson investigators reached out to her and she hung up on them because she just wanted it all to go away. Now, she said in early 2012, she went to Harve Pierre and she told him that she was kidnapped, and his response was, that's crazy, but it's going to be okay. By August of 2012, she was on vacation and still being sent work, and she told HR that Diddy was mad at her because she didn't tell him that Cassie had cheated. She was terminated after being accused of improperly taking vacation and said she lost her income, her benefits, her 401k, her house, and her car. In her own words, she said that Diddy told her I would never work again, that he would show me that all these people weren't my friends, that he would make me unalive myself. By the end of 2012, she did settle with Diddy for wrongful termination, but said it was hard for her to find work after. She was then asked, was there a discussion of you working for Mr. Combs again? And she said yes, as chief of staff. And asked when was the last time she spoke to Cassie, she said 2018. And then she was asked Kid Cudi, and she said 2012. She just finished her cross-examination, and I will be back to let you know what happened with that.
Subscribe and hit the like button.
Diddy trial, day 10, you know I've got the details. On the stand today, we have Capricorn Clark, who started working for Bad Boy Records in 2004 and worked for Sean Combs until 2020. She recalled when Sean threatened to kill her. She says that her and head of security, Uncle Paulie, were walking through Central Park in New York City. Sean brought up Suge Knight. Clark described Sean's calm demeanor in expressing his anger over learning that she had worked for Death Row Records. The prosecution asked her if she took the threat serious, and she said very serious. She also recalled the threat he had made regarding 50 Cent. In case you didn't know, these two hate each other, but 50 Cent is hilarious. If you don't follow him on Instagram, do yourself a favor. Apparently, after Sean and 50 finished doing press for MTV, Sean told his manager he was having issues with 50 and punctuated the chat with, I like guns. Not this man giving another employee a lie detector test. She says that Sean had asked her to bring some jewelry to the airport, and she didn't realize that the jewelry was already gone until she got to the airport. She was then brought to an office building in New York City that she did not recognize and questioned for hours. A heavy-set man on the 6th floor of the building told her she was going to have to take a lie detector test, and if she failed, she was going to be thrown in the East River. The first test came back inconclusive, and she was threatened again to be thrown into the East River. She was brought home and forced back the next day, saying she was told by Sean's security she was not free to leave until she was cleared of any wrongdoing. She said it took 5 days of testing. She didn't want to go through it, but at the same time, she wanted to prove her innocence. She said that working for Sean caused her stress-related alopecia, losing hair for a $55,000 salary job, working 7 to 4, doing everything from research to fetching dry cleaning and food. She said sometimes she would have to prep the hotel rooms for Sean, unpack his clothing, make sure his personal belongings were in place, things like baby oil, small cameras, rugs. She also had to set up IV drips for him and Cassie, which would help them recover from drug use. She testified how Sean would make Cassie obediently move to his command, that one time Sean summoned his girlfriend Cassie into the room, had her sit down, stand up, and turn around. Clark said that Sean then allegedly added, "You bitches don't want to do that, and that's why you don't have a man." Capricorn Clark testified to the court that while Sean usually obtained rugs on his own, she was sometimes asked to get substances for him. He once made her find white powder when they were in France. He would also ask her to get prescriptions in her name, but he would pay for it. She recalled an incident in 2006 at his Miami house where he shoved her. Capricorn used her hands in a shoving motion when describing the enraged Sean allegedly pushed her around while saying, "If you hate it here, then get the F out of my house." She also testified that she's the one that told Cassie to get a burner phone when talking to Kid Cudi because she was concerned that Sean would find out. She says she took Cassie to Best Buy to buy a phone because she feared Cassie was going to get us all killed. She then recalls the incident from December 22nd, 2011, when Sean banged on her apartment door, enraged about going to confront Cudi. She says that Sean was visibly furious, his pants split at the crotch. He was pacing back and forth with a firearm, saying, "Get dressed, we're going to kill Cudi." This testimony is crucial for the government's racketeering case because the prosecutors can show that Sean marshaled his company's resources for a criminal action. She said she's sitting in the car at Cudi's house and Sean had accessed the main door. She called Cassie from the car and told her that Sean came to Cudi's house to kill him. She said Sean came back to the car, asked her for her phone, and called the last number in the call history. He then ordered her to call Cassie to let her know Sean had her and that he wasn't going to let Clark go until Cassie came. Cassie calmly agreed. Clark testified that Clark went to pick Cassie up. They returned together to Sean's house, where Sean allegedly told them not to speak to police and urged them to convince Cudi to not tell police either. Clark testified that when her and Cassie returned to the home, Sean beat her and kicked her repeatedly, wearing only a robe and underwear. She told the court that Sean came at her 100% full force, repeatedly kicking her while she was crouched more and more into a fetal position. Cassie was crying quietly as Combs kicked her in the back over and over. She said that Sean told her if she intervened, he would attack her next. She added that no one on Sean's security team intervened to stop the attack. She said when no one on Sean's inner circle stepped in to stop the beating, she had no other option but to call Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother. She said she recalled calling her and saying, "He's beating the shit out of your daughter. I'm in over my head. Please help her. I can't call the police, but you can." She said that Sean was angry, upset, and wanting to know when Clark knew about Cassie and Cudi and why she didn't tell him. He looked at them and said, "I should kill you bitches." After the incident, Diddy fired Capricorn Clark and threatened that she would never work again and that he would make her want to.
Subscribe and hit the like button.
Hey guys, Diddy, week 3, day 10. We have a lot to get through and I forgot my AirPods, so bear with me. We started off this morning with Capricorn Clark. She's a former Diddy assistant, former marketing manager for Sean John. She then was promoted to a global marketing manager, and then also she was Cassie's brand manager as well. She worked for Diddy on and off from 2004 to 2018, and then had another conversation about working with him in 2024, believe it or not, but we'll get there. And she met him in 2002, and they were actually hanging out as friends through a mutual friend of hers named Jeanette that she talked about. And in 2004, she was contacted by a headhunter that said, "Hey, you'd be perfect for this position of an executive assistant," because she previously worked at Def Jam Records, so she had experience. And then she said that she called Diddy because they were friends, or she called him Puff, and he said, "Yeah, hey, come work for me." Now, she says that one of her really good friends, or her best friends, has kids with Suge Knight. So on her first day of work, she described that Diddy and a security guard took her out into Central Park at 9 o'clock at night, or after 9, and basically said, "If anything happens with Suge, we'll have to kill you." And she also, she actually told us that one of the bodyguards that we had been hearing about quite frequently, Rube and D-Rock were brothers. Just a fact. I didn't know that. You know what? School just like got out or something. I want to kind of move. So she also testified. Oh, she talked about 50 Cent. So I don't know what year this was, but she said that Diddy was doing a press event with 50 Cent at MTV, and they actually shared the same manager at this point, and his name was Chris Lighty. And she said that Chris Lighty and herself and Diddy got into an elevator, and Diddy was having a problem with 50 Cent, and he said something like, you know, I don't like the back and forth, I like guns. So that was a moment where we kind of heard about this feud between 50 Cent and Diddy. Now, hold on, I'm moving. Sorry for the close-up. I gotta move. These kids are super loud. Okay, so she also talked about how Diddy borrowed jewelry from Jacob the jeweler, diamond necklace, a bunch of expensive jewelry, and she was in charge of it, and the jewelry was stolen. It went missing, and she talked about how she was taken, basically, she had to go, you know, home from this trip when the jewelry was taken, and she was picked up the next day by Uncle Paulie, his main security guard at the time, and she was brought to this deserted building. And she said that the door locked on the outside, and actually that building turned out to be one of his future offices, but at the time it was like really run down and gross. She said she was brought up to the 6th floor, and she was greeted by, you know, a man, which she described as 5 times her size, chain smoking at this table in the middle of the room. And she said that she was made to take a polygraph for 5 days straight. She could go home, you know, in between, but she described being terrified and really having no choice. Let me see. Yeah, she said that, you know, she was afraid of what would happen if she didn't take the polygraph. She felt forced into it. She also described being so stressed that she developed alopecia, which is where you lose your hair from stress. And she said that she would have no breaks during the day, and she would work from, when she was an assistant, she would work from 7 a.m. to 4 a.m. And yeah, she made $65,000. And at one point she went to HR about overtime, and they calculated her overtime, and it was something like $80,000. And she said that HR wrote it down for Diddy, and Diddy tore it up, and she never got her overtime. She testified to setting up hotel rooms like other assistants. She talked about how she would have to clean up after. Oh, and she also testified that Kim Porter stayed in hotel rooms with Diddy quite frequently. And the setup would be the, you know, clothes, toiletries. We heard about the Louis Vuitton med bag. She corroborated that with different drugs. And she also mentioned a camera box with camera equipment in it and some drugs, I guess. And she talked about how she would clean up the hotel room after because there'd be baby oil everywhere. She said there'd be handprints on the walls in baby oil, and it would just be, you know, on the floor, on the wall, just kind of everywhere. Corroborating what we've already heard. Let's see what else. She said that she saw him do drugs a couple times in her presence, mainly ecstasy. She also bought or got prescription drugs for him, and sometimes they would be under her name, sometimes under his name. She talked about an incident in Miami one summer in 2006 where, you know, he had told her that she couldn't leave his house. She left to return Pharrell's manager to this music video location that he was shooting at, and when she came back, she got yelled at, and she was exhausted, and she said the next day she woke up, she went into the kitchen to get some breakfast, and the chef was there also, and the chef was very exhausted. Chef, Jordana or Jordan, and, or Jordan Atkinson, I think. And she said she asked the chef about some turkey bacon, and the chef was like, there is no effing turkey bacon. And I guess that prompted Capricorn to be like, oh, I effing hate this place. And then she said that the chef went outside and told Diddy this, and that Diddy came back inside and put both of his hands on her shoulders, Capricorn Clark's shoulders, and used about 70% of his force to basically shove her out the door and told her to get the F out, get the F out. And she quit after that. That was 2006. And then she returned again in 2007, I believe. She returned again in 2007, and she was working as Sean John Women's brand manager, and she was making more money, and she was happier that way. So then we get into and she also said that Bad Boy paid her rent, paid her car, all of that stuff. So she was kind of beholden to them. So then we get to 2011, and we get to the fact that she's also working on projects for Cassie, and then we get into the Kid Cudi kidnapping incident, which we heard some new testimony here about what happened that night. So basically, she described that, Cassie started kind of bringing up Kid Cudi to her. One day, Cassie had texted Capricorn to see if Kid Cudi could come on a hike with them at Runyon. And Capricorn Clark was basically like, I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, why would you text on this phone? He pays for all of our phones. He's going to see this. So delete this. And then she went to get her a burner phone, basically. And so she kind of knew about this relationship, and she kind of just said, Cassie, be careful. So we all know Diddy finds out about Kid Cudi, and Capricorn Clark says that she was at her home, and between 5 and 6 a.m. she was awoken by some banging at the door. It's Diddy outside of her home with a gun. She lets him in. She felt like she had to, and he says, we're gonna go kill this mother effer. We're gonna go kill this whatever. And she had no choice. She had to go. She said she gets in the car. He's got a gun on his lap. She said they get to Kid Cudi's house. Diddy and his associate, the bodyguard, they go inside. And she said that she called Cassie's burner phone. And then she changed the name to Stormy, her friend, after she called her, because Diddy's like coming back out, and he's like, who are you on the phone with? And she was like, my friend. And then he's like, give me the phone. He called it back, and she said he was so mad, like even angrier than when he showed up at her house. And by the way, the jury is like looking like crazy. They are like taking notes. They are so into this story. Then she said that Kid Cudi actually pulls up next to them when they're in the car, and they basically start chasing him, and he gets away. So we all of a sudden hear about this high-speed chase, which was something I had never heard before. And then she was forced to call Cassie, and then, Diddy basically made her and Cassie basically try to convince Kid Cudi not to tell the police it was Sean Combs, and he said, well, I'll kill you guys if you don't get him to do this or say that it wasn't me. And then Capricorn Clark says when they got to Diddy's house the next day, she and Cassie, it was really sad. She said he kicked her over and over and over again, and Cassie was crying, and she was in a fetal position, and she kept backing away pretty much until she was out in the street. And that Capricorn Clark, he kicked her out. She had to walk home, and she said, she called Cassie's mother and just said, I'm in over my head. I can't do anything, so you need to do something. And it was pretty sad. So let me see. I've got like 20 seconds left here. So we just started Cross, so I'll have to get into that later. But the Cross, they basically said, hey, in 2024, Agnifilo said, you met with us, with your lawyer, Brian Friedman, about a possible chief of staff job for Diddy, and said something like, hey, this whole thing, this criminal investigation would have never happened if I was here. But more later. Hey guys, Diddy, week 3.
Y'all subscribe and hit the like button.
Okay, hey, it's another Diddy Tuesday. On this Diddy Tuesday, we have Capricorn Clark, former assistant of Diddy. She is the third assistant of Diddy to take the stand.
It is day 10 of the Diddy trial, and Capricorn Clark is on the stand. You guys, this is a very intense testimony. But the prosecution asks, your first day, where did Mr. Combs take you? And she said Central Park with Uncle Paulie. They asked, what did Mr. Combs tell you in the park? She said, since I worked with Suge Knight, if anything happened, he might have to kill me. Then there was an objection. The judge overruled it, and they asked, how did you take it? She said, seriously. They asked, how did you react? She said, I didn't have anything to do with that stuff. And they objected again, and the judge sustained. They asked, what was Paulie's role? She said, in all aspects and movements to keep Diddy safe. They asked her who D-Rock was. They said a good friend of Biggie Smalls. He looked like a running back type of body. Did you ever see Diddy have a gun? And she said, yes, in my home. They asked, did he ever talk about it? Capricorn said, Mr. Combs told Chris Lightly he had a gun and he had a problem with 50 Cent. were you ever accused of stealing? And she said, yes, jewelry, it had been given to me, it was on loan. They said, but it went missing. And she said, yes. They asked, what did Uncle Paulie do? And she said, he questioned me for 3 hours. They asked, did you went home? And she said, to Queens with Uncle Paulie, he searched my house. Where did Uncle Paulie take you? And she said, 1710 Broadway. It was dilapidated, it was being fixed up, but I didn't know that. Uncle Paulie took me to the 6th floor. The door was locked behind me, and there was a 6-foot folding table and a heavy-set man. And from there, she said she was given a lie detector test. They asked, did you want to be taking this lie detector test? And she said, no, I was afraid. How was the test? And she said there was wires. They were questioning if I stole anything. They asked, did he tell you the results? And she said that they were telling me to calm down because they couldn't get a good reading, and he might have to throw me in the East River. Throw her in the East River. What did Uncle Paulie say at the end of the test? And she said that he'd come back the next day to figure it out, and we started again. Another lie detector test, the same location, all day. They asked if you were free to leave. She said no. They said, how long did this go on for? 5 days. She was whisked away, locked up on a lie detector test for 5 days. And they also asked if she told anyone where she was, and she said, no, I was just trying to survive, and I worked under an NDA. Plaintiff Lowe said objection, and the judge sustained. The jury should disregard the last answer. Then they asked what happened after the 5 days, and she said that she'd have to return to work and that Mr. Combs would see her the next week. They asked if you ever discussed it with her. She said no, and they were like, why would you continue to work with him? And she was like, if I left, they would think.
So Cassie Ventura apparently wanted to date Jay-Z if she wasn't dating Diddy. Jacob Wasserman with TMZ leaving the courthouse right now, and what a day it was, the Diddy trial. By far our most emotional testimony yet from Capricorn Clark, one of Diddy's longtime assistants, was nearly tearing up the entire time, and the day came to an end when she testified that at one point Cassie Ventura told her that she had a thing for Jay-Z. Diddy's lawyers mentioned that at one point Capricorn told Cassie that she should consider seeing other people when she was dating Diddy, to which Cassie apparently responded, well, Jay-Z's taken, so who else am I gonna date? This is the first time we've heard Jay-Z's name drop this trial, and clearly Diddy's team is trying to make it seem like Cassie has a type. So Cassie Ventura apparently wanted to date Jay-Z if she wasn't dating Diddy. Jacob Wasserman with TMZ leaving the courthouse right now, and what a day it was at the Diddy trial.
She wanted to date Jay-Z, if not Diddy.
If Capricorn being kidnapped by Sean Diddy Combs wasn't enough, this testimony continues, and they asked, was Combs violent with you? And she said, yes, at Star Island, he told me you were not to leave this house. Pharrell Williams was brought by boat, and she returned Mr. Walker to Palm Island. He said, where the F are you? You cannot have a life. One time I asked the chef if there was turkey bacon, and he said, no fucking turkey bacon. I said, I hate it here, and the chef told Mr. Combs, and he pushed me again and again. They said, what did he say? He said, if you hate it here, then get the F out of here. Did you leave your employment? I did. But you returned, and she said, yes, as a global brand director. They asked why, and she said he was impressed with what I did in the job I had left for a couple albums. He said, you wouldn't have to work directly for me. They asked, what did you do for Cassie? And she said that she was managing her image and managing optics for her, but Diddy had like the final say on everything. They asked, in LA, where did you live? She said a gated community. We had followed Kim Porter there. They said, where was Miss Ventura? And she said, in New York City on the West End, and she would come to LA and stay with him or me or in a hotel. They asked who else was Miss Ventura seeing, and she said, Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi. And they said, how did you learn that? And she said that she brought him to her apartment. She would text me that they were going to a public place in LA, and I told her that was a bad idea and to delete the text. And they asked why. She said if Mr. Combs learned about Mr. Mescudi, Mr. Combs paid for the phone and hers. Capricorn Clark said, I took Cassie to Best Buy to get a burner phone. They asked, when did Mr. Combs return to town? And she said not long after that, he took Cassie to the hotel in Ciparini. December 22nd, 2011, between 5:30 and 6, there was banging at my door. And they asked, what did you see through the peephole of the door? And she said, a furious puff. Then Agnifilo had an objection. The judge asked another question, Ms. Steiner, and they asked what was his movement. Pacing with something in his hands. And they said, did you open the door? And she said that she did. They asked, what did he say? And he said, we're going to kill this N. They said, where was the gun? Capricorn Clark said it was in his hand, and she said, I didn't want to go. He said, I didn't give an F. What you want, get dressed. And they said, did you try to escape? And she said, no, I got dressed. And they asked her who joined in on this, and they said, Ruben in a black Escalade executive class. And they said, where was Ruben? And they said, driver's seat. I got in the back seat, right hand side. Mr. Combs was to the left of me. He usually would have sat in front of me. A gun was in his lap. I asked, how long did the drive from your house to Cudi's house take in Hollywood Hills? And she said, if you push it, 15 to 20 minutes. And they said, what did Mr. Combs and Ruben do at Cudi's house? And they said they went in and they asked, could you see? And she said, yes. Then they asked Capricorn Clark, what did she do? And she said that she called Cassie on her burner phone, told her Puff was at Cudi's house, and then I changed her number in my phone to my best friend Stormy. They asked, what did you hear on the phone? And she said that Scott was at Cassie's, which is Kid Cudi. Then they asked what happened when Mr. Combs came back, and they said he took my phone and called the last number, and they saw that Cudi was driving up. Mr. Combs saw my face, and they said, there's that N-word right there. And then Diddy left with all of them, and they saw the police coming up in the other direction, and they asked what was Mr. Muscatti's reaction, and she said that he was mind blown. They objected. It was sustained. They said what happened at the house. They got back to the house, and she said that he was kicking Cassie again and again. They said, how was Cassie? And she said, in the fetal position. Mr. Combs kicked her all the way to the street. She was crying silently. Where was he kicking her? He said her back side. And she was like kind of crying through saying this. And they said, where were you? And she said 5 feet away, and so was Ruben. What did Mr. Combs say to you? He said, if you jump in, I'm going to F you up too. And they asked, what did Ruben do? And she said nothing. They said, who did you call? And he said, D-Rock. I told him, tell your brother to stop Puff. He was kicking the shit out of her. Capricorn said she also called Paulie, and he said that he would take care of it, but Ruben did nothing. And then they said what happened after that, and she said, Mr. Combs told me to get the F out too. I left on foot. They asked, could you still see her getting kicked? And she said, until I went around the bend. They asked, who did you call? And she said, Regina Ventura. I told her he's been kicking the shit out of her daughter. I can't call the police, but you can. And they asked, why couldn't you call the police? And she said, the mission of the day was to get Cudi, so no calling police. They asked her in December 2023, why did you retain an attorney? And she said, I was traumatized by Cassie's civil complaint. And Capricorn said her complaint did not reference me, but I reached out to Mr. Combs and said, I want my life back. You kidnapped me. Agnifilo objected. The judge overruled. And they said, was there a discussion of you working with Mr. Combs again? And she said, yes, as chief of staff. When did you last speak with Ms. Ventura? And Capricorn said in 2018. And
so Cassie Ventura is in labor, according to TMZ, and Capricorn Clark is still on the stand at the Diddy trial. She went on to state that she left Bad Boy after the situation in Miami when Diddy was pushing and shoving her, and then he asked her to come back a few months later to work on the Sean John women's line as well as be Cassie's PR. During that time when she was Cassie's PR, she was helping Cassie with her album, doing videos with her, doing photo shoots at her house, makeup, stylist, all the things. On top of the fact that she found out that Cassie was seeing Kid Cudi, and she took Cassie to Best Buy to buy the burner phone. Now remember, Cassie talked about having a burner phone where she was talking to Kid Cudi on. She said the reason that she got Cassie the burner phone is because Cassie was calling and talking to Kid Cudi on that phone that Bad Boy was paying for. So she was like, girl, you can't be doing that. And so she got her the burner phone. And she knew about her being with Kid Cudi. She knew about Cassie being with Kid Cudi. So that's why P. Diddy came to her house and told her, why didn't you tell me about this situation? She said, what situation? Why didn't you tell me about Scott? She said, I don't know no Scott. Who is Scott? And he said, you know Scott. Scott is Kid Cudi. You need to tell Cassie that we're on our way to his house right now, because Cassie gave me his address and we're going to his house right now. She tells him she don't want to go. The diddler said, you don't got no choice, because baby, he had a pew-pew in his hand and told her to get dressed now. She went and put on some street clothes, got dressed, got into the car with them, and went to Kid Cudi's house. She then said that him and his security team went into Kid Cudi's house. While she was in the car, she called Kid Cudi on the phone and said, no, she called Cassie on the phone and said, Diddy is at Cudi's house. You need to get here now. She said Cassie and Kid Cudi got in the car and came on their way. Now, Kid Cudi already testified that he called Diddy and said, what are you doing in my house? Woo-doo-woo. And Diddy said, I'm here waiting on you. Pull up. So Kid Cudi said he went and pulled up, and they saw Diddy in that black truck on the side of his house, and he just kept driving. They followed him and ended up losing him. Then they finally got to where they were going, and Diddy said, call Kid Cudi now and tell him don't call the police, because he saw the police officers when he was driving down, right? The embankment from the LA Hills. And he saw police officers. Now, she didn't say if the police officers were coming because somebody called or if that was just a separate incident, but that scared Diddy, and he said to tell Kid Cudi, don't tell the police. So after that, he told her, you need to go and get Cassie and bring her back to my house. She went and got Cassie and brought Cassie back to Diddy's rental house, and Diddy allegedly kicked Cassie repeatedly while Capricorn Clark stood there and watched, and so did Uncle Paulie. And then Uncle Paulie turned to her and told her, you better not jump in. She ended up walking off and walking home, and when she was walking home, she called Cassie's mom and said, you need to call the police because he is kicking Cassie. And I can't call the police, but you can.
It's day 10 of the Diddy trial, family. Let's see what the judge, the government, and Diddy's defense are talking about before the next witness gets called to the stand. Let's get into it. Now, as you can see above, United States versus Cone, day 10, starting with rulings on the testimony of Capricorn Clark and others. DNA in Kid Cudi's burned car, investigator Jimenez.
So Diddy's former assistant Capricorn Clark told the court today that Diddy had kidnapped her, and so much more in her direct testimony. Let's get into it. So before working for Diddy, Clark testified that she had an internship with Def Jam Records, and then she went on to work for Death Row Records, which at the time was managed by Suge Knight. In 2004, she started...
If you guys don't convince him of that, I'll unalive all of you. This is something that Diddy said to Capricorn Clark, his ex-assistant, in 2011 after he broke into Kid Cudi's home. I'm Amanda from The Point of No Return, a true crime podcast. If you guys don't convince him of that, I'll unalive all of you. This is something that Diddy said to Capricorn Clark, his ex-assistant, in 2011 after he broke into Kid Cudi's home. I'm Amanda from The Point of No Return, a true crime podcast, and we are covering the Diddy trial, day 10. So today, Capricorn Clark took a stand, and she testified literally all day long. This is going to be a head-scratcher and a juicy one, to say the least. So from 2004 to 2006, Capricorn worked as Diddy's assistant. You may hear me call her Cap, just to cut it in half, okay? Then from 2008 to 2012, she worked as his director of marketing for Sean John's Women, okay? Then after that, she was terminated in 2012, but came back in 2016 as the creative director for Cassie up until 2018. When she was Diddy's assistant and assistant only, at the beginning, she was only getting paid $65,000. One of her first days of work, she ended up getting sized up by Diddy. So this is what happened. Capricorn had a history in the music business prior to going to work for Bad Boy and working for Diddy. She also worked at Def Jam, and she also worked for Death Row Records. When Diddy got wind that she worked for Death Row, aka Suge Knight, he was pissy. Him and one of his well-known bodyguards that goes by the name of Paulie, who's a big guy, they go and they take Cap to Central Park and they have a conversation with her. Here's a piece of the conversation. They said something along the lines of, he told me he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight, and if anything happened, he would have to unalive me. That is what she testified today in court. Capricorn said that she continued to work with Diddy because she felt like she could have been more transparent. So she kind of blamed herself in this instance. Another thing that she brought up today was something that Diddy's other assistants also brought up, lie detector test. So there was some jewelry that went missing at one point in time. Diddy was loaned some jewelry from Jacob the Jeweler. Y'all, I'm sure if y'all follow hip hop from the early 2000s, you remember Jacob the Jeweler. He also got caught up in the BMF scandal. Research that for yourselves. So Jacob the Jeweler loaned Diddy some jewelry. Somehow the jewelry is misplaced. Capricorn is then the next day, instead of going to work, she is picked up by Diddy's team. Diddy goes to Miami, and she is left in New York, and she is taken to a dilapidated building where she says she sits down at a 6-foot-long fold-out table where she is met with a man that she said is 5 times her size, drinking coffee, and chain smoking on cigarettes, and he presents her with a lie detector test. He then tells her during this lie detector test, because she's so nervous, that if she does not calm down, he would throw her in the East River. She was then taken back to the same building for the next 5 days straight. She would then go through more lie detector tests. She says she kept going back because she needed to prove her innocence, and she felt like this was the only way to prove her innocence. She said she didn't report this incident to the police because she had already signed an NDA. After this, she said she went back to work with Diddy, and it was like nothing had happened. The first time that Capricorn left Bad Boy and left Diddy was because of an incident that happened in his Miami mansion. So she was already a little annoyed with the way that things were going, and she just kind of disgruntledly complained to the chef about them not having turkey bacon. This is what happened. The chef then goes and tells Diddy about it. He comes back inside. He says, "If you hate it here, get the F out of my house." Diddy also at this time gets in her space, touches her, and this is when she says, "Nah, this is too much." He crossed the boundary. However, 2 years later in 2008, she returns as the director of marketing for Sean John Women. So she said that she returned because she knew that she wouldn't be directly dealing with Diddy from day to day. During this time, she would occasionally hang out with Kid Cudi, she would occasionally hang out with Cassie, and they all became friends. She said around November 2011 is when she figured out that Cassie and Cudi were dating. She also testified today that she was very concerned that the two were dating, and she told Cassie, if you're going to date Kid Cudi, you should probably get a burner phone, because at the time, Diddy was still paying both of their phone bills. However, it didn't work. He still found out anyway. On December 22nd, 2011, Capricorn Clark said that Diddy came to her house and was banging on her door with something that sounded like it was metal. This was between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. She opened the door. He had a gun in his hand. She also mentioned that he had a rip in his crotch and he had on slacks. I don't know what that was about. The first thing that flew out of his mouth to her was, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he was referring to Cassie and Kid Cudi's relationship. The next thing he told her was, "Get dressed, we're going to unalive him." When she tried to refuse, this is what he told her. He said, "I don't give a F what you want to do, go get dressed." So they traveled in Diddy's Escalade with one of his security guards to Kid Cudi's house that morning. Capricorn said that she stayed in the car and she was able to call Cassie on Cassie's burner phone. She testified that she told Cassie that Diddy showed up to her house with a gun, after that kidnapping her, forcing her to go to Kid Cudi's home so they can do something to him. At the time, she also changed Cassie's name on her phone to Stormy, her burner phone to Stormy, so Diddy wouldn't know who she was calling. In the background of this call, Capricorn could hear somebody in the background saying, "He's at my house." This is when Cassie said, "Oh, I'm okay." Capricorn also testified that at this point in time, she called Lauren London to speak to her as an insurance policy, just to let somebody know where she was. She said at the time, she looked at Lauren London like a sister, so she needed to tell somebody where she was. When Diddy got back in the car, he asked her who she had been talking to, and this is what he said. He called the burner phone, and he looked at her call log. He said, "B, who the F is this number?" I'm trying to stay sincere, y'all. I can't even take myself seriously. Capricorn then testified that Cudi gets there and he pulls up in his Porsche alongside of Diddy's Escalade, and then he zooms off. Then the Escalade chases the Porsche, and Cudi is able to lose them. By the time they lose them, the SUV turns back around, and by the time the Escalade turns back around, they see the sirens coming, and that is what calms Diddy down, and he's like, "All right, maybe we should go home." But it didn't end there. The next thing that happened was Diddy then told Capricorn and Cassie both that they needed to convince Cudi, "Hey, do not tell the police a thing." Here was a direct quote from her testimony. She says, "If you guys don't convince him of that, I'll unalive you all." Following this incident, Cassie also sent Capricorn, as well as her mom, an email describing everything that happened that day. Soon thereafter, Capricorn will also talk to two Bad Boy executives, Harv Pierre, as well as the head of HR, and tell them about the kidnapping. Harv would then tell her, "That's crazy, but it's gonna be okay." It actually wasn't okay. By August of 2012, she would get her walking papers. She said that she was on vacation. She was still being sent work while being on vacation, and by the time she got back, she was fired. She told HR that Diddy was retaliating against her because she didn't inform him that his girlfriend was dating Kid Cudi. She was terminated shortly after this, and the reason was because she took improper vacation. She also testified that soon thereafter, she won a wrongful termination lawsuit because of this. They never disclosed what the settlement was. But she did say because of this, Diddy threatened her that he would blackball her and that she would never work again, and that kind of came true. His direct threat to her was, this is what she said, that I would never work again, that he would show her that she has no friends. He would make me unalive myself, is what she testified. She also testified today that as late as 2024, she had another opportunity to work with Diddy as potentially being his chief of staff. Her and her attorney met with Diddy's lawyers. After this initial conversation, they never met again. There was also talks from Diddy's defense about her possibly having a crush on him at one point in time, but she said the text messages were taken out of context. She also testified to Cassie's disposition over the years. Here was a quote that she said about Cassie in 2016 when she came back to work for her. She said her drug use was preventing her from the opportunities that were before us. So she was so drugged up, she was saying that she literally couldn't even work. She also testified that Cassie was less devoted to her career when she began dating P. Diddy. So Capricorn has kind of solidified a lot of what we already knew, but today she was able to expound a lot more on the Kid Cudi incident that we've already heard so much about. So tell me what you guys are thinking in the comments.
One of Diddy's former assistants took the stand today, claiming that Combs actually kidnapped her so she could help him kill rapper Kid Cudi. Scripps News Group reporter Alex Miller is joining us now outside that federal courthouse in Manhattan with the latest. Alex.
Emotional afternoon for Capricorn Clark as she described trying to repair the relationship she had with Sean Combs over the course of years after this Kid Cudi incident. She described her perspective. We've heard it from Cassie's point of view. We've heard it from Kid Cudi's point of view. Now we heard it from Capricorn Clark's perspective. She is the one who alerted Cassie Ventura as to what was happening. She said Sean
Okay, this is the last part. So they let us out for lunch, and when we come back, this is around the time that the cross-examination starts. So Diddy's lawyers start to speak to Clark. She said that when they were in Central Park, Clark said that when she was in Central Park with Puff and head of security Paul Lawford, they ran into Naz and Khalees. And as stated, it was her first day of the job. The defense kept mistaking. Earlier, I mentioned how she had there was a conversation where Lauren London was there. The defense kept mistaking Lauren London for Lorianne Gibson. Like, it was like a consistent thing where they kept mistaking it. And Clark was like, I never mentioned a Lorianne Gibson. I said Lauren London. Clark's first time meeting Cassie was briefly when Cassie was signed.
Good evening, everybody. This is your girl, Angie, and I'm here to give you a full recap on everything that happened. Day 10 for the Diddy trial. As you know, they were gone for the Memorial Day weekend, but they're back today, and the first person that was on the stand was Diddy's previous assistant, Capricorn Clark, and this is what she had to say. So this right here is Capricorn Clark. She's a former director of marketing for Diddy, and she has been involved in the music industry since graduating from high school, where she landed an internship at Def Jam, right? She said both of her parents died shortly after that, which meant she had to start life a lot earlier. After Def Jam, she worked for Death Row Records, which Suge Knight then managed. Around 2004, she started working for Combs at Bad Boy Entertainment as his personal assistant. After briefly leaving in 2006, she returned to work for Diddy in 2007 as the director of marketing. She said she became a local brand director in 2008 before being terminated in 2012, and she worked with Cassie as a creative director. She said she was threatened on her first day of work. She said in 2004, on her first day of work, Diddy took her to Central Park with his security guard, and sometime after 9 p.m. Eastern, and he brought up her former employment with Death Row Records, which was founded by Combs' rival, Suge Knight, as you guys know, as most of you know. He told me that he didn't know if I had anything to do with Suge Knight, and if anything happened, he would have to unalive her. He told her that he didn't know, that he would have to unalive her. The security guard stood by silently as Combs threatened her, Clark said. She said that she told Combs at the time, "We'll just have to see." She testified that she couldn't convince him that she was trustworthy at the time and said she couldn't have been more transparent about her employment background. She said she remembers Combs discussing guns once. She said Sean Diddy, when she was Sean Diddy's personal assistant, she heard him discuss guns. Him and his then manager got into an elevator after Combs did an MTV event that also involved rapper 50 Cent. Combs told the elevator companions that he had an issue with 50, and after further conversation, Combs said, "I don't do that. I like guns." Combs' demeanor was very serious, she said. So then Diddy had accused Capricorn Clark at one point of stealing jewelry. All right, so she was accused of stealing diamond jewelry that was on loan to him from a jeweler, right? She had an assignment that she would hold the jewelry as she traveled from New York to Miami. She realized that the bag holding the jewelry was missing before they got to the airport. Okay, so she says Combs went on to Miami, leaving Clark with his security guard who questioned her for hours, then searched her apartment. The next day, she said the security guard picked her up from her home and left her in a locked, vacant office space with another man who administered a lie detector test on her. Clark testifies that the man told her at the time, if she failed to test, they're going to throw you into the East River. She described him as very wide, but never learned his name. All right, she said she was petrified. She said that she took multiple lie detector tests regarding that incident after he accused her of stealing. Capricorn Clark said at one point the man administering the test told her she needed to calm down because the results were inconclusive. They weren't getting a good reading. She said she couldn't calm down. And eventually one of Combs' security guards took her home and picked her up the next day to repeat the same process. This was done for about 5 days in a row. She said she didn't want to do it, but she thought the lie detector test was the only way to prove her innocence. She said she didn't report this to the police because she worked under a non-disclosure NDA agreement. So after 5 days of tests, Combs' security told Clark she could return to work. Clark testified that Combs never asked where she was during those 5 days, and he never mentioned the lie detector test to her. She said she didn't know if the jewelry was ever found. She said grueling hours as Combs' assistant led to stress-induced alopecia. She said that she was the director of marketing. She worked from 9 a.m. until 4 a.m. as Combs' personal assistant without breaks for meals. Combs told her that if she fails to complete any tasks, she would lose her job. She said that on a good night, she got 4 hours of sleep and developed stress-induced alopecia. She made $65,000 a year annually at the time, she said. She also said that she was due $80,000 for 3 months of overtime, but wasn't paid. She said she, in her testimony, she continued to testify about her early employment. Under Sean, at one point, she went to Human Resources with this complaint about all of her overtime. So Human Resources rep from Bad Boy Records presented Combs with a sheet that calculated that Clark was owed $80,000 for a 3-month period of overtime. Clark said that he ripped up the paper and he never compensated her for overtime. So they had a few discussions regarding the hotel stays. She said he traveled with drugs and cameras. She said when Sean Diddy Combs traveled, his rooms were usually reserved under the names Frank Black, Frank White, Capricorn Clark. The name Frank Black was a reference to the late rapper and Bad Boy Records artist Notorious B.I.G., who had a nickname Frank White. Capricorn said she would unpack all of his clothes and shoes and personal belongings and put them in their place. She said Combs traveled with a toiletry bag containing drugs and a camera box, which had 4 cameras, along with a small bottle of baby oil and a small bottle of lube. Clark said she would also bring candles to provide lightings in the rooms. After Combs' stay, Clark said she would sweep the room for anything left behind. She said she sometimes saw damage to the rooms, including handprints left in oil. Prosecutors need to show criminal meeting of the minds to prove conspiracy charge, a legal analyst says. The testimony of Capricorn Clark, a former employee of Diddy Combs, should help corroborate both Kid Cudi and Cassie Ventura testimonies. Okay, So Capricorn Clark says she described what she said was Combs' drug use. She saw Sean Diddy Combs doing ecstasy and Molly about once a week. In addition to the prescription medication, she testified, Combs' drug use increased over time, she said. A man called One Stop usually provided drugs when they were in Los Angeles, and the drugs usually were delivered to her or Combs directly. Combs asked her to get him ecstasy fewer than 10 times. Clark saw Combs offer drugs to his friends and girlfriends. During a trip to France in 2006, Combs asked her to get cocaine, and when she asked Combs who it was for, Combs responded that it wasn't for him. Clark then led security guards to obtain the drugs. Clark would also get prescription drugs for Combs. Sometimes the prescriptions were made out to her, and other times they were made out to Combs. She said she counted $100,000 euros in the club earnings for Combs. She recalled a time when Combs had $100,000 euros that he made from club bookings in Europe. She said she personally counted the cash and believed Combs kept it in his personal safe in his bedroom. Combs told his ex-assistant she couldn't have a life while working for him, she testifies. She recounted a time she was in Combs' Miami home the summer of 2006. She said when she arrived, Diddy told her, "I don't care what goes on this weekend, you're not to leave this house." Combs later directed Clark to escort a guest to another location in Miami, and she said she stayed for about an hour before receiving a call from Diddy asking where she was. Clark said when she returned back to Diddy's house, he told her, "See, your problem is you want a life, and you can't have that here." The following day, Clark said she told Combs, "Chef, I hate it here," and the chef relayed that to Combs. He immediately looked at me and said, "You hate it here?" And he charged at me. She said Combs began pushing her and demanded she get out of his house. Clark said that Diddy pushed her about 30 yards using 75% of force. Eventually, one of Diddy's security guards intervened by telling Diddy to stop and telling Clark to pack her belongings. Clark testified she left her job after this incident because it was crossing my boundary. Stay tuned for part 2. Good evening, everybody.
Subscribe and hit the like button, please.
Which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. He then took it back to 2001, where she had met Diddy, and she was asked if Diddy never did substances at the time, and she said he was doing X. Agnifilo then said, but it got worse, and she said yes. She was then asked if she had worked for Def Jam and Run DMC, and she said, I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z. And then he asked her, so how did you come to work for Mr. Combs? Said she put her resume on Monster, and he said, you'd work for me, and I was like, maybe. He was acting on Broadway in Raisin in the Sun, and I was impressed. Then talked about how she had shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign, and she said, my job was to get the t-shirt on the celebrities and into the photo shoots. I'd call them and say Puff wanted them to come. Agnifilo said, and they came, and she said they did. She was asked how long was that before the jewelry went missing, and she said about 4 months. Asked when did the jewelry go missing, she said it was after the 4th of July, and said that which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. He then took it back to 2001, where she had met Diddy, and she was asked if Diddy never did substances at the time, and she said he was doing X. Agnifilo then said, but it got worse, and she said yes. She was then asked if she had worked for Def Jam and Run DMC, and she said, I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z. And then he asked her, so how did you come to work for Mr. Combs? Said she put her resume on Monster, and he said, you'd work for me, and I was like, maybe. He was acting on Broadway in Raisin in the Sun, and I was impressed. Then talked about how she had shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign, and she said, my job was to get the t-shirt on the celebrities and into the photo shoot. I'd call them and say Puff wanted them to come. Agnifilo said, and they came, and she said they did. She was asked how long was that before the jewelry went missing, and she said about 4 months. Asked when did the jewelry go missing, she said it was after the 4th of July, and said that which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. He then took it back to 2001, where she had met Diddy, and she was asked if Diddy never did substances at the time, and she said he was doing X. Agnifilo then said, but it got worse, and she said yes. She was then asked if she had worked for Def Jam and Run DMC, and she said, I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z. And then he asked her, so how did you come to work for Mr. Combs? Said she put her resume on Monster, and he said, you'd work for me, and I was like, maybe. He was acting on Broadway in Raisin in the Sun, and I was impressed. Then talked about how she had shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign, and she said, my job was to get the t-shirt on the celebrities and into the photo shoots, I'd call them and say Puff wanted them to come. Agnifilo said, and they came, and she said they did. She was asked how long was that before the jewelry went missing, and she said about 4 months. Asked when did the jewelry go missing, she said it was after the 4th of July, and said that, which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. She then took it back to 2001, where she had met Diddy, and she was asked if Diddy never did substances at the time, and she said he was doing X. Agnifilo then said, but it got worse, and she said yes. She was then asked if she had worked for Def Jam and Run DMC, and she said, I don't go back that far. I'm more Foxy Brown, Redline, Jay-Z. And then he asked her, so how did you come to work for Mr. Combs? Said she put her resume on Monster, and he said, you'd work for me. And I was like, maybe. He was acting on Broadway in Raisin in the Sun, and I was impressed. Then talked about how she had shadowed him on the Vote or Die campaign, and she said, my job was to get the t-shirt on the celebrities and into the photo shoots. I'd call them and say Puff wanted them to come. Agnifilo said, and they came, and she said they did. She was asked how long was that before the jewelry went missing, and she said about 4 months. Asked when did the jewelry go missing, she said it was after the 4th of July, and said that, which was short for chocolate, and she said yes. She then took it back to 2001.
Subscribe and hit the like button.
Diddy trial day 10, Capricorn Clark is on the stand.
Y'all, when I say I got some piping hot motherfucking teeth for y'all, I'm talking about sit this shit with your pinky up. Tell me why 4 of the fucking jurors from the Diddy trial are missing right now. When I say missing, like Amber Alert, missing. Where the fuck are they? Do I think Diddy got something to do with it? Hell yeah! He about to go the fuck down. That's why they had to postpone the damn trial. Because we on day 11. Y'all know that, right? We on day 11. They had to postpone it because some of the goddamn jurors is missing. What the fuck? Now we out here acting like goddamn Nemo daddy trying to find them. It just fucked me up when Kid Cudi got on the goddamn stand and told us how he was only fucking with Cassie for a month. But Diddy is the reason why he stopped fucking with her. Because Diddy was literally harassing him. He said Diddy broke into his motherfucking crib, tortured his fucking dog, locked his dog in the goddamn bathroom. Dog been cuckoo crazy ever since Diddy did that shit to him. What the fuck? He said Diddy broke into his garage, cut a hole out the top of his motherfucking sunroof. That motherfucker wacko tobacco, okay? Then he said he kept blowing his motherfucking line up about Cassie. As this messy ass trial continued, Kim Porter's name come up. Y'all know why her name came up? Because we all, if you don't think that, stay the fuck away from me. I feel like Diddy had something to do with Kim Porter unalignment. I'm sorry. Nothing was wrong with that lady. That lady would probably still be here if she didn't want to do that tell-all book. So let's tell it all, okay? Al B. Shore said out his own mouth, Diddy's the reason why he had a motherfucking heart attack in the first place. Because, and Komora also said that she was writing things, giving it to them, letting them know the shit that Diddy was motherfucking doing. And Diddy silenced her forever. Okay? Yeah, I knew this shit was gonna come out. I'm ready for that shit to spill open, okay? And to be honest, the people I can't wait to see get on that goddamn stand is Jay-Z and goddamn Mary J. Because let me tell you just like that, y'all know what the fuck Diddy been doing all these goddamn years. Hell, that make me think that Diddy's sister, Keisha Cobbs, she knew something was going on with Diddy. That's why she got the fuck on gone. Oh, baby. She ain't want shit to do with Diddy when she found out that he was sex trafficking and doing all these freak offs. She said, my brother got too much going on. He ain't finna mix me up in this shit. Prayers to those missing jurors. I'ma just say like this. They better come the fuck up. Because this shit is crazy. Ain't no way in hell them motherfucking people should be missing right now. Or unless you guys then, found somebody that motherfucker scared them off and told they had to go into hiding. And I don't know what the fuck Diddy is. Stop acting like Diddy don't got pulled on motherfuckers to do certain shit. You see what the fuck he been doing all these years? Oh, okay. Y'all.
He had the white party that we all know on the 4th of July at his house in the Hamptons. Asked who else had gotten a lie detector test, she said Mike B, his stylist. She said she never took it to HR, but she did get fired for 3 weeks. She then said she came back to work for Diddy on his 35th birthday, and she was in charge of the celebrity list. When she came back between 2004 to 2006, she was making $65,000 for him and then $90,000 at Jive. Asked why she came back to work for Diddy, she said she had gotten top records for R. Kelly, and he was impressed. He asked her to come back. It was for his brand, Sean John, but for women. He then goes on to say that she thought she was a really good employee for him, and then said that she worked really hard, and when she was asked if others worked hard, she said, not as hard as me. He then got emotional and started crying when she said, I did learn a lot from Mr. Combs. He broke that glass ceiling for us Black people in the business world. And asked if she needed a minute, she said, no, it's complicated, and this is where they took their lunch break. They did take a longer lunch break today, so I will be back once they're done with her cross-examination.
Y'all subscribe and hit the like button.
Week 3 of the Diddy trial. Let's talk about what's going on. I'm Alex.
Here we got Diddy versus Capricorn Clark, with the key players being Diddy.
Diddy's defense team is fully cooked. Let me explain what happened. There's breaking news now that just came out that there's an emergency motion filed by Diddy's defense team. Last week, there was an expert psychologist who testified. I remember saying they need someone to testify who was trying to explain what happens to victims who are abused like Cassie. Because everybody on the defense, they're trying to prove like, oh, she was, a willing participant. She was of free will. And she explained things like love bombing, trauma bonding, basically that these abusers are so manipulative and they control and they do this violence, but then all of a sudden shower with gifts. So the person's almost like a slot machine. They don't know which version. Diddy's defense team is they're gonna get of the abuser, the violence or maybe some of the love. The person feels controlled. They feel trapped. They feel like the person controls every aspect and no one would believe them because they're so shamed. Not to mention Diddy controlled Cassie's whole career, her whole life. He basically almost owned her in one sense. But it seems that this expert's testimony was so strong that the defense team filed an emergency motion to try to get her testimony tossed out of court, trying to say that, well, this expert can't speak on Cassie specifically. It's just general. It doesn't speak about her particular situation. Don't you need to? They're going to get of the abuser, the violence, or maybe.
Yes, I heard the news. The trial of Sean P. Puff Diddy Combs is back in action, and this time he's been seen in court. This is a trial for the alleged freak-offs with singer Cassie, where he was seen in court.
So during this trial today, Cassie gave birth by her beautiful husband, Alex. Lord have mercy. But anywho, it was said that Clark had a crush on Diddy as well, and also sent him a text message telling him how fine he was, that she had a crush on him. Also, she was saying some little slick stuff in court today. So, do y'all think that Clark was jealous of Cassie? They claim to be sisters, but you've had that happen, and think about it. Diddy is this big, rich man, so they let the money get in the way of their thinking, is what I'm thinking. But your thoughts, do you think that Clark was jealous of what Cassie and Diddy had going on? At any rate, I hope that Cassie and her family reunites and enjoys their life, and she leave Diddy.
Y'all subscribe, hit that like button. Follow me for more updates on the Diddy trial.
The main thing I always hear is, where is Farnsworth Bentley? And now Farnsworth Bentley has been named in a lawsuit with Diddy. Now, it's very important to note during this time that a civil lawsuit has absolutely nothing to do with Diddy's criminal case, but Diddy and Farnsworth Bentley have just been sued. A man named Randy Pittman is suing Diddy and Derek Watson, aka Farnsworth Bentley. He is suing alleging SA and assault. He's also alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress and gross negligence. So let's get into his allegations. He is alleging on May 23rd of 2003, he was performing his duties as a talent scout for Options Talent at Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta, Georgia. He says at that time, a Sean John fashion show was being held at the mall. He claims that he did not work for Sean John and he was not affiliated with the fashion show, and his presence at this event was solely in his capacity as a talent scout for Options Talent. He alleges that during this event, he was approached by Farnsworth Bentley, who inquired about his occupation and asked if he knew any women who would be interested in attending an after party hosted by Sean John Combs. He claimed that Farnsworth Bentley offered him an entry to the party on the condition that he bring female guests along, and he agreed that he would attempt to bring some guests to the event. He claimed that following the fashion show, he was introduced to Sean Combs, who provided him with the event credentials and instructed him to act if he was a part of the Sean John team, including by taking photographs of Combs during the event. He then claimed that Diddy and Farnsworth Bentley directed two young females who were present at the event to a post-event interview at Rich's department store and then head to a hotel party. This man is claiming that these females were only 13 and 14 years old, and they were transported to the hotel by members of Combs' entourage where a party was held and where the essay occurred. He claims that once they got to this hotel, Diddy and Farnsworth Bentley provided him and the two females with alcohol and pills described as E, and coerced them into non-consensual acts through intoxication, manipulation, and threats of violence. He goes on to allege that him and the females were subject to SA, battery, and other unlawful acts by Diddy and Farnsworth Bentley during the duration of the party. And that's the end of his allegations in his lawsuit. But y'all have been asking, where is Farnsworth Bentley? And it now looks like Farnsworth Bentley is about to be coming to the front. We'll just have to see how this all plays out in court. But y'all let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments.
Y'all subscribe and hit the like button.
So Diddy and Steve Harvey get caught in a secret love affair. They supposedly been doing this for 25 years, but not by choice. What do you mean by that? There's a choice. So Diddy installed cameras in Steve's Beverly Hills mansion in every room, and this is where they met up at, and Diddy would record everything that they had going on, because he was like, if we get caught, I got proof. So the internet buzzed about Diddy dating Lori, which is Steve's daughter, but that was a cover-up. He was really dating the daddy. And then Diddy ended up in jail. And Steve, you went and visited him. Why would you do that? Why would you go visit that man is the question I want to ask. Anywho, there was a raid and the police found footage on hard drives of what y'all really had going on. And Steve stopped visiting. I just want to know.
I don't believe it.
Diddy is a monster.
It's day 14 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy.
It was a wild testimony today from Capricorn Clark. She claimed that she was fired by Diddy when she was on.
It's sad because I was one of the people who was really rooting and liking Dawn when Danny the Kane was like coming out. It was big and everything. And
Y'all subscribe and hit the like button.
about her, like,
I finna go to bed. Subscribe to me to stay updated with this Diddy trial. And thank y'all for watching.